Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. So today we're talking about the ongoing drama in the Democratic Party over Governor Polis's decision to commute disgraced Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters' sentence and the city of Denver's new one-year moratorium on data centers. Joining me today is the editor-in-chief of The Lever, the host of the Master Plan podcast, David Sirota. Hi.
Hi there. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too. I'm actually really excited to talk to you, of all people, about Democratic Party drama. So
yes, a lot of drama.
Let's dig into it. So, late Friday afternoon news dump, our favorite thing as news people to get at 3 p.m. on a Friday, which always to me says maybe they don't want us to look at this information, but we were all looking at it. Governor Jared Polis announced he was commuting Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters' prison sentence, and she will now be eligible for release on June 1st. Just a reminder for folks, she's the county clerk here in Colorado who allowed unauthorized people to access voting records amid efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election in which President Trump lost to Democrat Joe Biden. This story was fascinating on so many levels. I have to say, one of the things that caught my eye, though, was that international outlets were covering this, like the BBC was reporting on it. So many reactions from folks online, in the press, from Democrats. David, what did you think when you saw this news?
Well, I think it's been perceived as a litmus test about whether Democrats as a whole will stand up for the rule of law. So I think there's an idea out there that this is kind of or there's a concern that it's part of a dam breaking. You let one little leak in the dam happen, and the whole dam can collapse. And I don't think, frankly, that's totally unwarranted. Those concerns. You had a judicial process. You had a conviction, and then you had a president essentially bullying a state on behalf of his political ally. And I do think, I know the phrase slippery slope is overused, but I think there is a fear that if you back down to a bully in a situation like that, you are creating precedents and a slippery slope for that president to do that again elsewhere. You're saying, yes, it's okay to back down to the bully. And so I think that's why it's gotten so much attention across the country and obviously outside of Colorado. And I think it's also within Colorado, it's incredibly embarrassing and undermining of the Democrats who have stood up for the rule of law. I mean, people like Phil Weiser, who's the attorney general, who was part of the prosecution of this case,
and
right?
many lawsuits against the Trump administration as well.
Exactly. So like he's involved in this case. The case goes through the judicial process, and then the governor of his own party swoops in to undermine it, and he's only one. I mean, lots of Democrats.
Yeah,
I think basically all Democrats. I don't know if there is another Democrat other than Jared Polis who thinks this is okay.
Well, and we'll get to that list. There's a laundry list of Democrats that have signed this letter, but I want to go back to something you were talking about with this idea of being bullied into this, and I would say I think Polis would characterize it as something different. I would say he's kind of been pissing off Democrats, for lack of a better term, for a while now. But something that happened, I want to say, I don't know, a month, 6 weeks ago, was he kind of alluded to this thought of like, I might be commuting Tina Peters' sentence. It was this very vague statement. And I remember he compared her crimes and her sentence to a representative here, disgraced Representative Sonia Jaquez Lewis. And he was kind of like, I don't know if the punishment fits the crime. And so he was kind of setting himself up, I think, for this announcement to come. Do you think that he sees himself as someone who has backed down to the bully?
I mean, I bet he's telling himself a story that this is part of criminal justice reform, but I don't really remember Jared Polis convening a criminal justice reform commission across the board. I mean, I think where is the leniency or the clemency or the commutation of all sorts of people who are convicted of nonviolent crimes, right? I mean, clearly Donald Trump elevated this in a way that was special, a special privilege. And Jared Polis responded to the elevating of the case. And I also think that we do have to take election meddling cases seriously when it comes to prosecution and consequences, right? I mean, that is the core of our democracy. Not to be too like West Wing about it, but like it actually is. And I think when you, especially when you're in the party that is saying, oh, there's a democracy crisis, and Donald Trump represents a democracy crisis, for one of your state's governors to go out there and say, actually, you know what? Nah, like it's okay, it's cool. Like I think there are collateral consequences here where Donald Trump will wave it around, feel emboldened, and if I had to guess, I'm guessing they're looking at trying to stomp into other states if this happens again, to threaten any kind of judicial process thrown against their allies, right, ahead of an election in which there are already concerns about election meddling.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to me in the context of, I feel like the Democratic Party has really leaned on the courts and leaned on the judicial system as a way to push back against Trump when other methods are not working, or they're just blown off, or they're just straight ignored. And I wonder what this move says about this leaning that the Democrats are doing so hard on the courts to make these decisions.
Yeah, but again, this wasn't a court decision to commute. This was an executive branch within the state of Colorado, an executive branch decision. And I think it's incredibly suspicious that Polis waited until after the legislative session to do this. I mean, that is so shady and so like.
Explain that. Why do you feel that way, the post-session move here?
First of all, it was a couple of days after the session. Okay, so it wasn't like, oh, I needed to wait 3 weeks or a month to figure other stuff out. I mean, clearly there was a let me wait until the session is over. And I read that as, I don't want the Democratic-controlled Colorado legislature getting in my way, making this embarrassing, passing a censure resolution, or I know there's calls for impeachment, but even a censure resolution passed through the legislative chambers would be deeply embarrassing to Polis. David Seligman, who's running for attorney general, is calling for the Colorado legislature to come back into session to do a censure resolution.
That's what I was going to ask. Can they call a special session for something like this?
I mean, I don't think that's going to happen, but I think it's worth pushing. I think it definitely is worth pushing. I mean, it's such a unilateral action and such a unilateral affront. But I guess what I'm saying is, waiting until after the legislative session does not express confidence. That does not express that you're really proud of what you're doing. It expresses a kind of deception, I think, to not actually have a public back and forth about what's going on. I find it really, really sketchy.
Well, and you brought this up too. More than 400 Democrats have signed on to a letter asking the state to censure Polis and consider sanctions. This letter said in part, Democratic candidates, organizers, volunteers, et al. Throughout Colorado have spent years defending the integrity of Colorado's election systems and combating disinformation targeting democratic processes and public servants. Governor Polis's clemency decision substantially undermines those efforts and damages the party's institutional credibility on issues of democracy and election integrity. That's a pretty bold claim to make against our sitting governor. So you're saying doing this post-session is sort of maybe making it a little harder for the party to convene and push back?
Correct. It's like I want to have my say, and I don't want anyone else to have their say or really weigh in at all. I think it's clearly a way to try to generate a lot of attention for himself. I mean, frankly, I think that's in part what's motivating this, is that this is Jared Polis's last moment in the sun before he is term limited out. I think he's a contrarian at heart in a lot of ways. And this was a way he could sort of get a lot of attention for himself and do it in a way, again, where there's not as much public blowback from a legislature that is now not in session.
I do find this to be an interesting legacy move if anything. Like you're saying, solidifying your legacy is
Yeah, it's
this
like always
being...
quirky. I mean, look, we've had this annoying, quirky crap from people in that, like John Hickenlooper, the quirky mayor, right? Jared Polis, the quirky governor. And now the quirky contrarianism is on literally whether somebody should be let off the hook for trying to do things that are about stealing elections. I would ask the question, what does this say to other clerks in Colorado, in all over the country, saying, hey, you know what? I can do what Tina Peters did, and I can get Donald Trump to storm into my state and get the governor of my state, Republican or Democrat, to essentially waive any consequences that I may face.
Yes, and I could see that being more of a concern for states where they are red. I mean, we're not even a red state. This happened in Mesa County, which is a different story than Denver, for instance. But I don't know, somewhere in the South, I could see this being an emboldening move.
A red state that's a swing state. Think about Georgia as an example. Right. Georgia's a Republican-controlled state, but it's a swing state that Trump could lose and the Republicans could lose, et cetera, et cetera. Like what message does this say? What message is Jared Polis sending to the Republican leadership of Georgia when it comes to stealing an election or trying to do shady stuff with elections, when Donald Trump will just pick up the phone and call his Republican pals in Georgia?
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by the Clifford Still Museum. Stimulate your senses at the Clifford Still Museum. Experience abstract visual language through sound in the new exhibition, Still in Sound. Discover how contemporary sound artists interpret Still's paintings with original sound compositions. Enjoy Celebrating 15 Years, 15 New Paintings in 15 Months, a new feature exhibition that unveils one never-before-seen Clifford Still painting each month. Upcoming events include First Friday Pay What You Wish Days, SCFD Free Days, meditation sessions, guided tours, behind-the-scenes experiences, hands-on workshops, family art making, infant art crawls, outdoor music performances, and so much more. Immerse yourself in joy this summer. The Still is open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday through Thursday and Saturday through Sunday, with special summer Friday hours from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. Children 17 and under are always free. Learn more at cliffordstillmuseum.org. That's cliffordstillmuseum.org. This episode is brought to you by Sphere of Six. Denver, we all have that one person we text when we need a recommendation. Do you know a good plumber? Who did your fence? Wait, who cleans your house again? That kind of word of mouth is much better than scrolling through random reviews from strangers. And that's exactly the idea behind Sphere of Six. Sphere of Six is a new app that helps you find local service providers through people you actually know and trust. Instead of relying on anonymous star ratings or paid listings, you can see which pros are connected to your trusted network. This is especially helpful around the Denver metro, where everyone is always looking for a contractor, a house cleaner, a landscaper, or someone who actually shows up when they say they will. Sphere of Six just launched, so now is the time to get in early, build your sphere, and recommend the local pros you already love. Visit sphereof6.com to sign up online. That's sphereofsix.com. Sphere of Six. Who's in your sphere? I want to read something that Senator Bennett said because he's also on the campaign trail to replace Polis, who is termed out, as you mentioned, but about the question of appointing Polis to take his Senate seat. But he called this move by Polis disqualifying. Do you think that's what was Polis's plan or thought? Like, I'm so unclear on what Polis wants to do post being governor. Would he, is this statement from Bennett like substantial? Do you think Polis cares?
I mean, my guess is that Polis doesn't care. My guess is that Jared is not interested in the Senate race. I think that Michael Bennett wouldn't have picked Jared Polis anyway. That's just my
I wondered
speculation.
about that. Yeah.
I think the move for Jared Polis, I would like to see Jared Polis maybe buy a part of the Rockies and make them better.
That's what you see in his
Jared is a big baseball. He's a big baseball,
and he's a millionaire. So he
so
could.
That's my thing. But like, I don't know how. Look, nothing is ever permanent, especially for people who have as much money as Jared Polis. All of that said, I don't really know how in the near future you run for statewide office without in a democratic state without this being a major charge against you.
I want to read you one more statement that I found really interesting from Democrat Milot Quiros. She's running for Congressional District 1, the current seat held by Diana DeGette. And she said on X, "I'm calling for an immediate investigation into any collusion between Jared Polis and the Trump administration. I'm also calling on the Colorado State Legislature to convene a special session, as we talked about, to consider articles of impeachment." What do you think about her claim of collusion?
Yeah, I think with Donald Trump, anything's possible, right? I mean, Donald Trump is a deal maker in the worst way possible. So I do think it's worth asking, were there any offers made? What were the negotiations about? Like, was it really just evaluated on the basis of what happened in the courts, or was there some kind of were there ulterior motives? Those are all fair questions. And again, those are the kinds of questions that Jared Polis didn't want to be easily asked, which raises the issue of the timing of the announcement.
Do you think that Colorado Dems have the fortitude to push forward with this, to push for these articles of impeachment or special session? Where do you think this leaves Dems in Colorado?
I have never seen the Democratic Party of Colorado be willing to have a really knockdown, drag-out fight inside of its own party. I think a lot of Democratic elected officials are super ticked off. I also think that this is not really a party that has bucked the top of its leadership structure in any significant way. So I would like to see a special session with all of this aired out, but I highly doubt it's going to happen.
Before we move on to our next topic, I do want to talk about the Lauren Boebert of it all, because, of course, she weighs into this situation. I found this interesting. The Guardian reported that Boebert suggested that President Trump had blocked funds for a clean drinking water project in her area over the initial prosecution of Tina Peters. She cheered the commutation of Peters' sentence and took some credit, even. In a statement, she said, in part, "I'm proud of the relentless pressure my office and I applied, working hand in hand with President Donald Trump to highlight Tina's case and demand fairness. The outcome would have not been possible without the continued pressure and advocacy from President Trump, who always knew Tina deserved fairness under the law." Do you think that, what do you think about Boebert taking a little credit here?
I mean, I think Lauren Boebert is playing this game where she is at times annoying Trump, and then at times sort of standing side by side with him effectively. And I think it's part of this dance. I mean, Boebert is now campaigning with or supporting Congressman Tom Massey in that extremely significant Republican primary in Kentucky. Massey, of course, one of the most outspoken, I don't even know if I guess I would call it anti-Trump, but thorns in the side of the Trump administration from within the Republican Party. Boebert has supported him. Massey was the guy who helped get the release of some of the Epstein files, right, as opposed to the Iran war, a warrantless surveillance. Boebert has opposed warrantless surveillance and the like. And that has drawn anger from Trump. I think Trump is potentially threatening to support a primary challenge against Boebert. So my point is, she's kind of playing this like bob and weave game of like, and she's in a very gerrymandered Republican district. And so she has to worry about whether Trump will support a challenge to her in a primary election at some point, in which presumably a lot of the Republican voters will follow Trump's lead.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up that point, is that there's this other context happening around Boebert and her relationship with Trump as we speak, outside of this situation with Tina Peters. But
right. So this is an easy one for her to say, hey, look, I am standing with Trump on this.
Yeah, on this particular issue. Well, we're going to keep watching it as always. Again, maybe a special session will appear. We don't know. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're talking about data centers. Okay, Monday night, Denver City Council approved a one-year moratorium on new data center development in the city of Denver. This means no new approvals for zoning permits for data centers for 1 year. So any that are under construction or underway or have been permitted are able to go forward, but they are not approving any new ones. David, you recently actually wrote about data centers, and you looked at a new Gallup poll that asked Americans what we think about data centers. What did you find?
Well, what the poll shows is that data centers are incredibly unpopular. People do not want to live near them. In fact, that one of the headlines that came out was that people are more willing and happy to live near nuclear power reactors than they are to live near data centers. And a lot of people, I think, express surprise at this, but I don't find it surprising at all. Not even a little bit.
That surprises me, honestly. I mean, why does that not surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me because the prospect of a data center in your neighborhood or in your community doesn't really come with the prospect of explicit, well understood benefits. It seems to people like all downside and almost no upside. Let's talk about some of the downsides. There's evidence that data centers contribute to higher electricity bills. There's evidence that data centers essentially use up a significant amount of water and could raise water utility bills, especially during a time like we're living through a serious drought. There's very little evidence that data centers really create long-term sustainable employment. Yes, they create short-term employment when you construct the data centers, but there's very little evidence that they create lots and lots of jobs. There's also evidence that they can create serious noise pollution. So ask yourself this question. If you're living in a community and you hear a data center is going to be built, a couple doors down from your house, why exactly would you be happy about that? Like, what are you getting out of that? And so that's why I'm not surprised. I mean, even with a nuclear reactor, and again, I'm not looking to live near right next to a nuclear reactor.
I was just going to say, I would love to get back to this part of it because I feel like folks would be like, are you kidding me? That has to be just as bad or feel just as bad. I don't know.
But here's the thing. A nuclear reactor at least is creating power that can add to your grid and potentially lower your electricity costs, and is producing a power that doesn't have particulate pollution. It is, I'm not sure I'm going to call it green power exactly because there is waste, but it's not producing like fossil fuel pollution. Now, I don't want to get too off track here on, whether we should have nuclear power or not. But my point is, at least nuclear power has some upsides. And I go back to the question of what upsides do data centers have? I've just gone through a lot of the downsides, and we haven't even mentioned the downside of it's usually a data center fueling a tech oligarch's AI system. And people, according to other polls, absolutely hate AI for the prospect of it actually killing jobs, ruining kids' minds, ruining the education system, et cetera, et cetera. So again, what exact upside is there for some? If you're sitting there in your community and you hear a big data center's going in, like, what are you like? Oh, that's great. That means that. What does that mean? Why are you psyched about that?
Yeah, I think I guess the pushback would be like, of course, AI is a whole other conversation in itself. And I think that's the thing that gets linked the most to what data center usage is for. But I could see someone saying, okay, well, don't these make, the things that we use every day function, like email or telehealth appointments or other things? I mean, we use the internet. We're on the internet right now. We use this every single day.
The transmission is going through a data center. Correct.
Right. So could someone say, well, I mean, don't you want to have those things accessible and available?
I mean, yes and no. Like, sure, that you can argue that infrastructure needs to be built out and maintained. Why does it have to go inside of a population center? I mean, like, it's a serious question. Like, I'm not trying to be like NIMBY here, but like, what is the need to put these things right in the middle of population centers, as opposed to in sort of properly zoned, out of the way industrial parks? I mean, the data is moving, and I'm getting slightly out of my league here, but like, the data is moving essentially at the speed of light. Okay, so I haven't heard a compelling case that we have to put a data center right in a residential neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and what I found fascinating was in the Denver Post reporting, Councilwoman Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez said there's already 50 data centers in Denver, which, I mean, could be an argument for them in that, like, I didn't know that, so maybe they're not affecting me. But then I think about the big fight that's been happening in Globeville area, Swansea, after the neighborhood found out that the thing that was being built in their neighborhood was not, in fact, affordable housing or a health clinic or whatever they thought. They learned later on, like, oh, this is a data center. And so...
And let's, you just mentioned affordable housing, which is a really important point, which is these data centers can be really big, right? They can take up a lot of space.
Yes.
Like, shouldn't the first priority be zoning for more and more affordable housing to build more housing? We have a housing crisis in this community, in this city, in this state. Like, I think it's perfectly reasonable, especially a 1-year moratorium, to say, hold on a second. Let's get some more data, no pun intended, on how much the energy load could contribute to higher electricity rates. And let's try to make as much space and prioritize as much space for affordable housing. It's not like these data centers are super small, right? I mean, they can be really big.
Yeah. And I would say I was referencing the fact that there was a coverage, I believe, from the Denver Post that said they had talked to folks in the neighborhood who literally thought that's what was being built there. And they hadn't really questioned it until they found out, oh, wait a minute, that's not what this is at all. And I think I would see a developer saying, well, the return on affordable housing ain't great for me, for my pocketbook, but data centers, that's maybe where the money is for that.
Yeah,
that's not an argument to me for the community, but I could see where they're arguing.
That proves totally. I mean, that's the incentive, that's why they want to do it. I'm just back to, for the community itself, for the city, what's in it for us, right? I mean, like, seriously, like I'm open to the idea that there is something in it for us, but again, those things that are in it for us have to outweigh the downsides. And I see a lot of downsides. Like, again, energy usage, water usage, noise pollution. I mean, I am somebody who frankly, I am like deeply allergic to noise pollution. Like that, it's one of the worst things that can happen in a neighborhood, because you can't escape noise pollution, right? It seeps into your living space, and so I don't want to just like downplay that. So that's a lot of downsides. I think it's incumbent on the companies that want to build these things and the politicians who want to allow them to build these things in our city to make an affirmative case as to why the supposed upsides vastly outweigh the downsides. I have not heard that case.
Yeah, I guess my guess would be, we're already having trouble attracting businesses here because of our regulations, and big tech giants like Palantir have left.
So a data center that's going to ultimately employ 10 people, like over the long haul.
No, and that's a fair point.
Right? Like, I mean,
the employment side of it, yeah.
If there was like we're bringing hundreds, thousands of jobs, it's like, okay, well, let's have that conversation. And as I wrote in my piece, look, we all know that communities have accepted downsides for upsides, right? I mean, a lot of people listening to this may have grown up in a town where the town had a factory that belched all sorts of pollution out of a smokestack, and nobody was cheering that on and thinking that was great. But the argument was, hey, the factory is creating and sustaining hundreds or thousands of jobs. At least there's a trade-off there. With a data center, I don't see. There doesn't seem to be a trade-off. There just seems to be mostly downsides.
Yeah, and I think you can really look to the Globeville area, Swansea area, and Denver here to see the failures of these big projects and those promises over and over again. I think the community groups would tell you this. Like, they promised with the expansion of I-70 that there would be jobs. Sure, that was temporary. They expanded a highway through a neighborhood and took out dozens of houses for the some family. One family lost their home twice from highway expansion. There was also, there is the Suncor oil refinery is still there doing that very thing. And so I find the GES case to be very compelling for many reasons. But this is a neighborhood that could tell you over and over again the failures of these situations and how it impacts their lives. And I see folks in I don't know, Wash Park looking at that and going, I don't want that either.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly.
And by the way, again, I'm not trying to be like NIMBY here, but I would say also make the case, like, what is the case that they have to go anywhere near a residential neighborhood? Like, explain to me the physical infrastructure case about why they have to go there, as opposed to, like, out near the airport. Right.
Right.
Like, I mean, right. It seems to me like there's a lot of space out near the airport, not near where any. Now, that doesn't solve the electricity issue, but at least solves some of the downsides. Again, and to be clear, I'm not proposing data centers near the airport. I'm just saying, what is the argument?
Why in the center of a neighborhood? Yeah. So I do want to touch on one part of this from the Denver side, is that the Denver plan now includes creating a task force to look at these issues: water, energy usage, noise pollution, etc. And the task force will include 3 council members, 2 representatives from utility companies, 2 union representatives, 1 industry representative, 3 people from advocacy groups, 7 community members, 1 subject matter expert, and 7 ex officio members from Denver city departments. Do you think a task force is a good answer here?
I think getting to the answers of how much electricity usage do these facilities use in the system, and being mindful of, if these facilities come to our city, how do you create electricity utility regulations that make sure that the rest of us are not subsidizing the cost of that power use or that water use? I think that's useful. Look, the more information, the better. My question would be, is this just a blue ribbon commission designed to get the tech industry, the tech oligarchs, what they want under the cover of a blue ribbon report, right? Like, is this going to be an honest evaluation of the upside, the downsides, and whatever upsides there may be? Or is this a way to essentially launder through into passage the zoning laws that distant tech oligarchs want from our city?
Yeah, and I will say Councilwoman Flor Alvidrez had a similar pushback. She said the whole task force thing I've seen over and over again with the administration hasn't worked out. So I have concerns. So, I mean, I don't know if her concerns are the same as yours, but I think that's a valid point, is like, what will we get?
Like, how honest is it going to be?
Get after this convenes?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's an honest assessment and it comes back and the assessment really does explore these downsides that I just mentioned in a real way, like, I think that would be useful to really document exactly what it might mean for our water and electricity systems and for noise pollution, et cetera, et cetera. If it's just, hey, we're using this to drape a nice veneer over the thing we already wanted to do, and help very powerful tech guys, like, that's not great.
Yeah. Well, we'll be watching for this task force to convene and see what they find. David Sirota, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Tina Peters about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our morning newsletter at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later.